Laura Peacher, 28, was last seen on October 16, 2018, dining at a bar in Sebring. 3 days later, a restaurant employee in Tampa called 911 after finding something suspicious near a dumpster. Laura was a vibrant and social woman. She was born in Michigan in 1989, had an older sister and brother. Laura was born with a short left arm, featuring a thumb and 2 fingers. Throughout her life, she faced discrimination due to her physical difference, but she persevered and remained positive. Laura worked as a job coach at Goodwill, supporting individuals with physical and mental disabilities. Despite her own challenges, her disability was just a part of her unique character. Laura grew up in Michigan before moving to Sebring, Florida, at age 26. She relocated to assist her aging grandmother, demonstrating her caring nature by leaving her job to be there for family. On the morning of October 19, 2018, a 911 call was made by restaurant employees who discovered a woman's body near a dumpster behind their establishment. They reported a foul odor, initially suspecting it was from a dead animal. Upon closer inspection, they found what appeared to be a deceased woman. When detectives arrived, they found the victim face down, partially undressed, with a plastic bag over her head, part of the body covered by a wooden board. She was identified as Laura Peacher, wearing a dress that had been pulled down below her breasts. Her hands were tied behind her back with a purse strap. A search of the dumpster uncovered a clear plastic bag containing personal items, including mail and a wallet with an identification card. Investigators discovered that Laura was not from Tampa but lived in Sebring, Florida, roughly 2 hours away. She owned a silver Toyota Tundra pickup truck, which she likely used to travel to Tampa. However, her pickup truck was not found in the parking lot near the crime scene. It was later reported as stolen and added to a law enforcement database for recovery efforts. Investigators spoke with the restaurant manager about the situation. The restaurant owners had cleaned the parking lot just 2 days before, on Wednesday. Since Laura's body was found on Friday morning, it was likely placed there between Wednesday and Friday. The medical examiner conducted an autopsy and discovered clear marks on Laura's neck, suggesting she had been strangled with a thin, rope-like object. Additional signs on her body indicated that she had been on the ground for an extended period, with noticeable discoloration of her skin. The medical examiner determined that Laura had died on Wednesday, 2 days before her body was found. Meanwhile, 1,200 miles away in Michigan, police informed Laura's family about her death. Her parents were devastated and made a 20-hour journey from Michigan to Sebring. Meanwhile, her pickup truck was still missing. The investigators knew they needed to piece together the timeline of Laura's final hours to solve the case. They aimed to uncover why Laura had traveled from Sebring to Tampa, who she had met, and the whereabouts of her pickup truck. Detectives first examined Laura's cell phone records. They found that on Wednesday, between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m., she received calls but stopped answering her phone, indicating something had gone wrong. The records also revealed that she made 2 calls that morning to a man. Laura's friends identified him as her boyfriend, making him the first potential suspect. Detectives wanted to speak with he to determine when he last saw Laura and whether there were any issues in their relationship. Before they could locate Laura's boyfriend, police received a tip that Laura's pickup was seen outside a convenience store in Tampa. Detectives rushed to the store, located 3 miles from where Laura's body was found. Upon arrival, they discovered that the pickup truck was no longer there. However, both the exterior and interior of the store were equipped with surveillance cameras. The detectives hoped these would provide critical information. After reviewing the camera footage, investigators saw a pickup truck arrive and park at the store. Although they attempted to zoom in for better clarity, the video quality was poor, preventing them from identifying the driver. Once parked, a man got out of the passenger seat, indicating that there were at least 2 people in the vehicle. This man seemed aware of the cameras, as he kept his head down and wore a baseball cap. He entered the store, but again, the video quality made it impossible to see his face. The man tried to steal some beer, but store employees stopped him. After leaving the store, he returned to the pickup and sat in the passenger seat, while the driver remained in the vehicle and was not visible on the cameras. About an hour later, patrol officers found Laura's pickup truck parked on the road, showing signs of a minor accident. The same man seen in the surveillance footage was sitting in the passenger seat. Upon his arrest, he identified himself as Calvin Gary. He was on probation and wearing an ankle monitor. There was no one in the driver's seat of the pickup truck, only a pair of abandoned shoes, suggesting that the driver had run away. Laura's pickup was sent to forensics for a detailed search for any evidence while detectives began interviewing Calvin. He claimed he had obtained the truck from a man known as Hot. Calvin stated that Hot had recently arrived in the neighborhood and that they had plans to steal beer from a convenience store. When detectives asked Calvin if he knew how Hot acquired the pickup, he said he did not know. He maintained that he had no information about Laura or what had happened to her. Calvin described Hot as a relatively short African-American male. He also provided detectives with Hot's location, guiding them to a specific address. Upon arriving, the detectives found Hot hiding in a bush, trying to avoid being seen, but they spotted him. They called for him to come out. When he did, he was wearing a shirt and pants but no shoes. The detectives asked the man to identify himself, but he refused to provide his name and was uncooperative. They then requested that he walk over to their pickup truck, which was equipped with technology for quick fingerprint identification. When they scanned his fingerprint, it matched a record in their database, revealing that his real name was Gary Tyrone Danielle. He had a long criminal record and had been incarcerated 3 times. Additionally, Danielle was from Sebring, the same town where Laura lived. Because he was not wearing shoes, detectives became even more suspicious that he may have been driving Laura's pickup truck. However, at that time, the police did not have sufficient evidence to charge him with a crime, so they had to release him. The investigators then focused on Calvin Gary, who, along with Gary Danielle, had driven Laura's pickup truck. Since Calvin wore a monitoring device, law enforcement could track his whereabouts. They found that he had never gone to the dumpster where Laura's body was discovered, nor had he visited Sebring, where she lived. Because of this evidence, the police ruled him out as a suspect. After interviewing Laura's boyfriend, detectives also cleared him as a suspect thanks to his solid alibi. He told them that on the evening of Tuesday, October 16th, Laura had gone to a bar in Sebring. This detail was significant since Laura had been at the bar the night before her death, prompting detectives to visit the bar and talk to the staff. The manager revealed that Laura often stopped by for a meal since she lived nearby. The last time she had been there was on the night of Tuesday, October 16th, and she appeared to be friendly and happy, with no unusual behavior noted. Detectives discovered that the establishment had surveillance cameras that recorded everything. They reviewed the footage, which confirmed the bar manager's account. Laura was wearing the same dress as when her body was found. She was sitting at the bar, chatting with a waitress, had not ordered any alcohol, and nothing unusual was happening. She only spoke to the waitress before leaving around 11 p.m. Further investigation revealed that about 4 hours after Laura left the bar, a witness saw her with a man. Around 2:45 a.m., the witness spotted her at a gas station near a convenience store on the other side of town. At that time, Laura was in her pickup truck and appeared to be fine. There were no signs that she was in distress or needed assistance. The witness also stated that Laura drove away with a man. Investigators went to the gas station where Laura was last seen and reviewed the surveillance footage. At 2:54 a.m., they saw Gary Danielle enter the store to buy cigarettes and talk to another customer before leaving. Another camera recorded Laura's pickup truck backing out of the parking lot and onto the highway. This sighting aligned with an eyewitness report stating that they saw Danielle and Laura together at the gas station near Sebring early Wednesday morning. To find clues linking Gary Danielle to Laura's murder, investigators examined items found in a dumpster. They discovered a partially torn ATM receipt that provided details leading law enforcement to a specific ATM at a gas station in Lakeland. The receipt showed a transaction occurred at 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday, 12 hours after Laura was last seen in Sebring. Detectives then visited the gas station where the ATM was located, hoping the surveillance footage would help them solve the case. After reviewing the footage, investigators located Laura's pickup truck, but they couldn't identify who was inside. Luckily, there were several cameras, and after the truck was parked, they captured Gary Danielle getting out and walking to the store. He withdrew cash from the ATM, purchased a soda, and then left the store. Laura did not get out of the truck and was never seen, leading detectives to conclude that she was likely dead by the time Danielle returned to the truck and drove toward the location where her body was eventually discovered. Danielle was taken to the police station for questioning. At that time, the police only had evidence that he had used Laura's pickup truck, so they began asking him about it. Danielle claimed that he found an unlocked truck with the keys inside and decided to take it. He stated that was the only action he took, and he had no knowledge of who owned the pickup. He mentioned that the interior of the truck appeared normal and he didn't observe anything unusual. The detectives showed Danielle a picture of Laura and asked if he recognized her. He said he did not know her. When they inquired if he had ever met Laura in Sebring, he again replied no. They informed him that they had surveillance camera footage from a gas station in Sebring that showed him with Laura. Danielle understood that the police suspected him of Laura's murder and chose not to answer any more questions. At that point, the detectives lacked physical evidence to prove to a jury that Danielle had killed Laura. There is a specific time limit for a person to stand trial, which begins when the suspect is arrested. Since the detectives were still awaiting forensic results, they decided to release Danielle. Although there was a significant risk that he might flee, forensic analysis provided substantial insights into the case. Experts discovered drops of Laura's blood in the back seat of her pickup truck. This indicates that her body was likely in the back seat at some point after her death, or that the crime occurred inside the truck. Investigators received a forensic report on items found near Laura's body, which showed DNA on the strap used to bind her hands. This DNA matched that of Danielle. Additionally, his DNA was found under Laura's fingernails. The DNA evidence and surveillance footage were sufficient to file charges, leading to Gary Danielle's arrest. At the time of his arrest, Danielle did not make any statements and chose to exercise his right to remain silent. He faced charges of first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and grand theft of a motor vehicle. Using the evidence collected, investigators attempted to create a timeline of Laura's final hours. They confirmed that she had been at a bar in Sebring alone and left the bar around 11 p.m. Following that, she went to the town center, where she met friends. On that same night, she encountered Gary Danielle for the first time, with no prior relationship between them. Investigators suspect that Laura may have agreed to give Gary Danielle a ride, possibly in exchange for money. Danielle's refusal to answer questions has left investigators uncertain about how he and Laura first met. However, it is known that Laura and Danielle were seen together at a gas station, where an eyewitness confirmed that Laura appeared alive and unharmed in her pickup truck. After leaving the gas station, something occurred that led to Laura being found strangled in her truck. The exact location of the truck at the time of her death is still unknown. 12 hours after the last sighting of Laura's truck in Sebring, surveillance cameras captured it at a gas station 25 miles outside of Tampa. At that time, Danielle was withdrawing cash from an ATM. He then drove to Tampa, where he concealed Laura's body next to a dumpster in a restaurant parking lot. Her body was discovered 2 days later. The trial for Laura's murder did not begin until nearly 3 years after her death, a delay largely due to global events. Laura's father, Art Peacher, spent a long time waiting to confront the man responsible for his daughter's death in court. Rather than condemning Danielle, he chose to remember Laura by sharing a story about her kindness. Art recalled an incident where a young boy pointed out Laura's short arm, and another boy mentioned her asthma. Laura responded, "Don't you know there's something wrong with everyone?" Her father presented several items in court that belonged to his daughter, including her journal. The cover of the journal had the phrase, "Live the life you've imagined." Inside, she had written about her dislike for cooking since she lived alone and had no one to help with the dishes. She also expressed her hatred for littering and shared her thoughts about her 4 tattoos. The most significant tattoo for her was a blackbird, which was a tribute to her sister-in-law who had passed away, inspired by a song. On August 24, 2021, Gary Danielle, age 50, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder as part of a deal with state prosecutors. In return for his plea, he accepted a 30-year prison sentence. He also confessed to charges of tampering with evidence and stealing a motor vehicle. During the short court hearing, Danielle, who is bald, has a short gray beard, and was dressed in orange jail clothing and handcuffed, remained silent in the jury box and did not address Laura Peacher's family. While the guilty plea concluded the legal proceedings, it left many questions unanswered, such as the reasons behind Laura's murder and how she came to be in contact with Danielle.
A girl set out from her home to visit a friend but never arrived. Initially, the police found no clues, and the case went cold. For years, it seemed that the answer was just out of reach, and no one could solve the mystery. Decades later, everything changed when the truth emerged in an unexpected way. Claire Tiltman was born on January 14, 1977, in the small British village of Greenhithe. As an only child, she attended an all-girls school where she made many friends. From a young age, Claire was focused and determined. She aspired to be one of the first female firefighters in the country. During high school, she volunteered at charity events organized by the local fire department, offering her assistance in any way possible. However, she was also committed to earning a college degree before pursuing her dream career. In January 1993, when Claire was 16 years old, she was busy with her final exams and considering her future education. On January 18th, just 4 days after her birthday, she went to a friend's house to discuss college options and potential applications. Claire left home around 6 p.m., informing her mom that she would return in about an hour and a half. However, when that time passed, Claire still had not come back. Initially, Claire's mom suspected that she had simply lost track of time and might have stayed longer at her friend's house. However, when it was past 8 p.m., her concern grew. She called Claire's friend's house, only to learn that Claire had never arrived. Believing that plans might have changed, she began calling some of Claire's other friends, but nobody had seen her that evening. A few minutes later, Claire's mom went outside and encountered a neighbor who informed her about an incident a few miles away. The area had ambulances and numerous police cars. Feeling anxious at the time, Claire's mom went directly to the local police station to report her daughter missing. She gave them a detailed description of Claire, but instead of taking her report, the officers asked her to return home. They mentioned that there had been an incident and that someone would come by shortly to explain the situation. A short time later, police arrived at her door with devastating news that no parent ever wants to hear. Her daughter had been found dead just hours earlier. That evening, 2 men were driving along a road connecting nearby towns when they noticed a girl kneeling by the roadside. Concerned, they stopped to check on her. As they got closer, they realized something was seriously wrong. She was struggling to breathe and appeared to be unresponsive. One man quickly ran to a nearby pub to call for help while the other stayed with her. Initially, he thought she might have been hit by a car since she was so close to the road. He tried to comfort her, but her condition deteriorated rapidly. Within minutes, she stopped breathing entirely, and when paramedics arrived, it was already too late. Her body was taken to the medical examiner, and the findings were shocking. She had been stabbed 9 times, likely with a large knife, but there were no signs of abuse. Meanwhile, the police started investigating the crime scene and quickly identified where the attack had occurred. Claire was probably ambushed in a narrow alleyway off the main road leading to her friend's house. The nature of her injuries suggested that the attacker approached her from behind. However, there was little else to help the investigation. The alley was quiet, dark, and deserted. There were no security cameras, witnesses, or helpful evidence. One crucial detail stood out. The medical examiner noted the murder weapon was unusually large, too big to be carried casually in a pocket. Detectives suspected that the killer had brought the knife from home, indicating a premeditated plan to use it. News of the murder quickly spread through Claire's village and neighboring towns. That evening, some students were still at school studying for exams when they heard the news on the radio. Initially, the victim's identity was unknown, but it wasn't long before rumors circulated. With no strong leads in the investigation, the police sought help from the public. A few people came forward claiming to have seen a man in a light-colored coat near the road around 7 p.m. Another witness reported seeing a man with dark, curly hair leaving an alleyway, but neither individual could be identified, despite the tight-knit nature of the community. Detectives suspected that the attacker might have had a personal connection to Claire, which could explain the motive. However, they also considered a more alarming possibility that this incident could be part of a pattern, indicating that they might be dealing with a serial offender. In December 1988, 4 years before Claire was murdered, a 27-year-old woman was attacked by an unknown assailant while walking home from work. He was armed with a gun and a knife, abducted her, and drove to a remote area where he attempted to assault her. After stabbing her 5 times, he left her, believing she was dead. Miraculously, she survived. Despite her severe injuries and the freezing temperatures, she crawled to a nearby road, where a group of workers found her. She spent 9 days in intensive care, and doctors successfully saved her life. However, the police were never able to identify or capture her attacker. After Claire was murdered, detectives and local residents started to suspect that the same individual might be responsible for both crimes. A few days later, Claire's funeral took place, drawing hundreds of people from the community. Prior to the funeral, her parents spoke to reporters and mentioned that they feared the killer might attend the service. The detectives shared this concern, so they were present at the funeral and carefully noted everyone who attended. However, this effort still did not lead them to the person responsible for her murder. In the weeks that followed, the police continued to question local residents and investigate leads, but they did not find any useful information. Over 2 years passed, and it began to feel like the case would remain unsolved. Gradually, as people stopped discussing what happened to Claire, until one day, everything changed. On October 17, 1995, a local woman was returning home from work when a man attacked her just a few hundred yards from where Claire had been stabbed. The attacker used a knife. When the woman fell and screamed, he fled the scene. Fortunately, she survived despite her injuries. However, detectives faced challenges since the attacker approached her from behind, so she couldn't describe his face or any specific features. Luckily, a witness stepped forward and reported seeing a white Ford Capri nearby. This information allowed investigators to quickly identify the car's owner, a local milkman named Colin. Police remembered that they had previously spoken to Colin right after Claire's murder. He had called them to report seeing a man with dark hair near the crime scene. However, when detectives met with him a few weeks later, his story had changed slightly. Initially, Colin said he was driving on that road around 6:30 p.m., but now he insisted it was closer to 5:30 p.m. Nevertheless, he had an alibi. His mother told the police that they had been driving together and were already home when Claire was attacked. Detectives had more reasons to be suspicious of Colin. He drove a white Ford Capri, which witnesses had also spotted near another attack. Colin was known for wearing a light-colored trench coat, matching the description given by several witnesses from both crime scenes. He also had light-colored hair, and 2 different people reported seeing a fair-haired man near the alley where Claire was murdered. These factors led detectives to seriously consider him as a suspect and to obtain a warrant to search his home. Police discovered a large knife in the house that matched the wounds of the latest victim. However, that was just the start of their findings. They also found a hidden journal, which contained shocking revelations. In the diary, Colin confessed to attacking a woman in 1988, referring to it as his masterpiece, and claiming it had a 95% success rate. When he learned that the victim had survived, he expressed a desire to do better next time. Additionally, he mentioned an attempt to sneak into a care home to kill someone, but stated that the plan failed. Colin Ash Smith shared some unsettling experiences from his past. He revealed that he admitted to threatening his first victim, warning her that if she reported him to the police, he would harm someone else. Additionally, Colin confessed to a stabbing incident in 1995. He was angry with his girlfriend, believing she was unfaithful. In his rage, he drove around looking for someone to hurt. Initially, he saw a man but thought that would be too risky. Later, he noticed a woman walking alone, stopped his car and attacked her. Afterward, He felt a sense of relief and was indifferent about the woman's fate. The diary revealed his intentions to commit additional murders and mentioned that he had broken into the homes of several women he knew while they were away. When police examined Colin's car, they discovered blood-stained clothes and a torn piece of a tie, which he had used in an attempt to strangle his first victim. This evidence was sufficient to charge him with attacks on both women. Detectives also believed he was responsible for Claire's murder and began investigating for any possible connections. Colin's family was familiar with Claire's family. They both frequented the same community center, a social hub for residents. Remarkably, Claire had celebrated her birthday at that center just 4 days before her death, and Colin had been there the same night. Investigators also noted that Colin attended her funeral. However, despite these connections, there was no concrete evidence linking him to her murder. While Colin was in jail, detectives interrogated him, but he denied any involvement. He did present a theory, suggesting that the killer could be a man who used to play pool with Claire at the community center. Colin claimed that this man left town soon after the murder and that he last saw him at Claire's funeral. Police were able to locate the man, but he did not match any of the witness descriptions of someone seen near the crime scene. In contrast, Colin fit the descriptions perfectly, but the police still lacked sufficient evidence to charge him. Colin was ultimately charged only for the 2 attacks that occurred in 1988 and 1995. In December 1996, he pleaded guilty and received life sentences, with the chance of parole after 15 years. However, investigators continued their pursuit of justice for Claire, seeking any evidence that could strengthen their case against him. Among all the possible suspects, Colin remained the most likely, but there were significant challenges: a lack of physical evidence and his alibi. Colin called the police the day after the murder, claiming he saw a man with dark hair near the scene about an hour later. However, this call contradicted his own alibi because, according to his account, he would have had to be very close to the alley when Claire was attacked. This raised suspicions among detectives. Was his mother lying to protect him? Detectives continued their investigation and eventually revealed the truth. Colin's alibi was entirely fabricated. They found concrete evidence showing that his mother was not with him that evening, indicating that she had lied to protect him. In addition to this, investigators made another unsettling discovery. They learned that Colin's father had disposed of a knife that Colin had brought home after the 1995 attack. He confessed to boiling the knife, taking it apart, and throwing away the pieces just hours before police arrived with a search warrant. As a result, he was sentenced to 12 months in prison. Colin's mother was also involved. She later gave an interview to a local TV station where she claimed it was her idea for her husband to dispose of the knife. She insisted that she believed her son was innocent and was afraid that the police would wrongfully accuse him of someone else's crime. Despite their extensive investigation, police still lacked sufficient evidence to charge Colin with Claire's murder. While he served time for other attacks, detectives continued to explore his background in hopes of finding a connection to the crime, but they came up empty-handed. The only notable find occurred during a routine search of his prison cell, where officers discovered disturbing notes filled with graphic fantasies about women he knew. These notes resembled pages from his old diary and painted a troubling picture of his mindset. After that, the investigation stalled. Claire's parents believed Colin was the murderer, and it weighed heavily on them that the police couldn't charge him. Sadly, Claire's mother died of cancer in 2008, and her father passed away in 2012, so neither lived to see justice for their daughter. In 2013, the case gained public attention again as detectives renewed their efforts to identify the killer. They reached out to the public for any information, and even the Prime Minister supported their appeal. Although many tips came in, none were helpful until a former cellmate of Colin's, Stephen Dubois, stepped forward with new information. He claimed that Colin had bragged about attacking a girl one day. According to him, Colin recounted seeing her at a crosswalk and described how he suddenly lost control. Detectives quickly noticed an important detail. Claire had been using a crosswalk that led directly into the alley where she was attacked. In contrast, the other 2 victims had been found far from any crosswalks. This clue strongly indicated that Colin might have been referring to Claire or possibly another victim that the police had not yet identified. However, detectives were skeptical about the existence of other victims since there were no similar unsolved cases reported in the area. Detectives did not have enough evidence to prove guilt yet, but they decided it was time to present all their findings and attempt to take the case to trial. Meanwhile, a new law in the UK was enacted, allowing prosecutors to introduce a suspect's previous convictions in court. This could significantly impact Claire's case. Colin was already serving a sentence for 2 violent attacks that were strikingly similar to Claire's case and occurred only a short distance from where she was killed. Additionally, investigators had testimony from Stefan and solid evidence that Colin's alibi was fabricated. With this information, prosecutors felt they had enough to proceed. On February 12, 2014, detectives announced that Colin had officially been charged with Claire's murder. This was significant timing, as it coincided with his first scheduled parole hearing. Instead of being released, he remained in jail while prosecutors prepared for trial. During the proceedings, he revealed even more unsettling information. He disclosed that he began sneaking out of his house at night when he was about 19 or 20 years old, taking a knife with him and roaming the streets, looking for someone to kill. Colin expressed that for him, it was about feeling powerful and having control over others. As he didn't want to appear weak, his ex-girlfriend testified that Colin started behaving unusually right after Claire was murdered. Initially, she thought he was just as shaken as everyone else in town, but later realized there was more going on. When asked about his feelings toward women, Colin admitted he both loved and hated them. He acknowledged that he struggled with low self-esteem and often felt worthless, which made it difficult for him to trust anyone, especially women. He also mentioned that he owned a collection of 20 to 30 knives at home, along with a crossbow and several air rifles, and his parents were aware of his collection. Additionally, Colin confessed that he never left the house without carrying a knife. When Stefan was called to testify, the prosecution faced an unexpected problem. Stefan stated that he could not clearly remember what Colin had said to him and acknowledged that he might have mixed up the conversation with someone else. The trial lasted 5 weeks, and on December 11, 2014, the jury found Colin guilty of murdering Claire Tiltman. He received a life sentence in prison, with the chance for parole after 21 years. When the verdict was announced, Colin showed no emotion. He later appealed the decision, but the court turned it down, stating that the evidence against him was overwhelming. After 26 long years, justice was finally served. Following his conviction, detectives branded Ash Smith absolutely evil and said he should never be released. Jaswant Narwal, chief prosecutor for CPS Southeast, called the case one of the most complex that CPS Southeast has dealt with in recent years. In November 2015, Ash Smith appealed against his conviction on the grounds that Judge Sweeney was wrong to allow seriously harmful material to be put before the jury. However, the appeal was dismissed by Judge Davis and 2 other judges of appeal. He is currently being held at HMP Durham. In honor of Claire, local officials first named a road after her, and later they renamed a street using her last name. In 2022, a new community center was opened, proudly named after Claire Tiltman. Claire Tiltman's tragic murder left an indelible mark on Greenhithe, but her legacy endures through the community's unwavering pursuit of justice and the tributes that honor her vibrant spirit. After 26 years, Colin Ash Smith's conviction brought closure to a case that once seemed unsolvable, underscoring the resilience of Kent police and the impact of new legal measures. While Claire's parents did not live to see this resolution, her memory lives on in the road, street, and community center named after her, inspiring future generations to embody her determination and kindness. The case stands as a testament to the power of perseverance, ensuring that Claire's light continues to shine brightly in the hearts of those who knew her and beyond. Mysterious disappearances often attract a lot of public and media attention. In many cases, there are no clear explanations or theories, and speculation continues without confirmation. Investigations can remain open for many years, sometimes even decades, A notable and unsettling case involves the disappearance of a young French woman named Roxane Benest and a man of Moroccan descent, Nabil Tourougui, who had just met her. They had arranged what appeared to be an ordinary date, but neither of them came back. Their sudden disappearance captured widespread attention throughout Europe. Let's examine the details we know about this perplexing case. Nabil Tourougui was born in 1999 in Nouvelle-Aquitaine, France. He was the second of 5 siblings, the only son in a modest middle-class family. His parents and younger sister still live in the same hometown. From a young age, Nabil showed exceptional intelligence, seriousness, and determination. He excelled in school, particularly in math and science. He aspired to earn a college degree, moved to Europe for better opportunities. Nabil possessed qualities that indicated he was destined for success. He had a close, loving relationship with his parents and sisters, supporting each other unconditionally, sharing everything without secrets. Those who knew Nabil described him as polite, calm, and genuinely kind, always willing to help others. He was also recognized for his humility and shyness. After finishing high school, he began looking for ways to move to Europe for further education. His older sister had relocated to Belgium 2 years earlier, where she enrolled in a university and later got married. She and her husband settled in Blankenberg, a coastal town in West Flanders. At 19, Nabil decided to move to France, specifically to Biarritz, a seaside resort on the Basque coast at Cape Saint Martin. The town has a population of about 25,000. It was once a retreat for royalty and aristocrats seeking relaxation. Today, it is popular with surfers from around the globe. However, Nabil's move to Biarritz was not for leisure. He was accepted into a respected engineering school, where he quickly gained a reputation as a talented student. In 2021, he graduated and soon received an attractive job offer from a major corporation. The flexible work schedule was ideal for him. Nabil adapted well to life in France and formed a broad circle of friends. He remained closely connected to his family, regularly communicating with his parents and sisters, and making annual visits home for holidays. He frequently visited his older sister, providing her support in various ways, and even became the godfather of her child. Roxane Benest was born in 2001 in Saint-Laurent-de-Siré, Charente. She grew up in a modest, middle-income family as the middle child of 3 siblings, with an older sister and a younger brother. Her parents prioritized their children's education and worked hard to help them build a bright future. Although Roxane wasn't the top student in school, she was known for her big heart and her desire to help others. Her friends described her as kind, generous, and hardworking. Roxane had a natural talent for connecting with people and enjoyed activities like reading, drawing, and photography. After graduating from high school, she moved to the beautiful town of Biarritz and started taking nursing assistant courses. Shortly after, she began working as a caregiver in a nursing home. Her colleagues and the residents consistently praised her compassion, kindness, and sense of responsibility. She treated everyone with warmth, understanding, initially to help with rent costs after relocating to a new city. Roxane shared an apartment with 2 friends. However, once she secured steady employment and earned a reliable income, she moved into her own place in a quiet residential complex on the edge of town. Roxane maintained a close relationship with her parents, sister, and brother, which is why she made it a priority to return home for family gatherings on weekends whenever possible. Roxane worked long hours and frequently felt tired. Her hectic schedule left her with little time to socialize beyond her coworkers and the people she cared for at work. However, she never voiced her frustrations. Roxane believed that things would improve in due time. To stay connected with friends, she maintained several social media profiles where she shared her interests. In January 2022, she met Nabil on one of these platforms. Nabil had been working hard and hadn't had much time for relationships. He rarely used social media, never thought of it as a way to meet someone special until he saw Roxane's profile. Her warm smile and kind energy instantly attracted him, prompting him to send her a message. Roxane accepted his friend request, soon found herself enjoying their connection. At first, when their conversations were casual, fun, But they quickly realized they had a lot in common, including shared interests in similar outlooks on life. Talking became a daily habit for them. They exchanged phone numbers and started having regular conversations, sometimes lasting for hours. Neither of them had any particular goals. They were just enjoying each other's company. They chose to take their time and really get to know one another instead of rushing into anything. During a visit with his older sister, Nabil mentioned that he had met someone who felt like a kindred spirit. He didn't provide details but promised to share more later. Meanwhile, Roxane told her sister about her new friend, describing Nabil as kind, thoughtful, and intelligent. Their busy work schedules made it hard to meet in person, even though they lived only a few dozen miles apart. Eventually, their days off matched up, and they decided to meet at a cozy cafe. Coincidentally, the date was February 14th of Valentine's Day. Neither intended for it to happen on that day, but they both saw it as a positive sign. Nabil and Roxane had a fantastic time together, discussing their past experiences and future aspirations. They shared laughter and stories, genuinely enjoying their time with one another. Neither of them was let down. Instead, they both sensed a real connection that could develop into a significant relationship. They even took a photo together that day and shared it on their social media profiles, tagging each other. This photo would later receive a lot of attention from the media when their names appeared in headlines, not just in France but throughout Europe. In the picture, they looked happy and relaxed. They had no idea that they had less than a week left to enjoy their current lives. Shortly after their first meeting, the two began planning a second date, which was set for Friday, February 18th, 2022. Both were eager and wanted to make it a memorable evening in a romantic setting. Roxane chose to keep her new relationship private for now. None of her co-workers or close friends knew she was dating someone. She only shared her feelings with her sister, telling her that she might be falling in love as she prepared for the upcoming second date with the guy she met online. Nabil sent a message to his older sister, telling her he had a date planned for that evening. He didn't provide any details about the girl or her name, but he hinted that he hoped to introduce her to the family soon. That Friday was a lovely sunny day, lasting until sunset. Roxane and Nabil was seen strolling along the boardwalk, where Roxane took some photos of the scenery and shared them on her social media. Later, they were seen at a cafe, sitting together, chatting, and laughing. Witnesses noted that they appeared relaxed and happy. Not long after, they disappeared without a trace. Nabil's close friend was the first to notice something was wrong. Nabil had promised to visit him at 10 p.m. that night to help him with an engineering project for his final thesis. Nabil said he would come after dropping off his date, but he never arrived neither that night nor the next morning. He wasn't replying to messages, and calls went straight to voicemail, indicating his phone was likely turned off. This behavior was completely out of character for Nabil, who was known for being reliable and keeping his promises. If something unexpected had happened, he would have communicated it to someone. Concerned, Nabil's friend reached out to Nabil's sister. She quickly informed their parents and alerted the local authorities. On February 19th, Roxane was supposed to work her shift, but she never arrived, which was unusual for her as she was a reliable employee who had never been late before. Her phone went unanswered, and her messages on all platforms were also ignored. That same day, Roxane's co-workers reached out to her parents to inform them that she was missing. Her family immediately went to Biarritz. Roxane's older sister had a spare key to her rental apartment, but when they arrived, the apartment was empty. All of Roxane's belongings were still there, and there were no signs of a struggle or that she had packed in a hurry. No one had heard from Roxane since the previous evening, and her friends and colleagues had not seen or spoken to her during that time. All they knew was that she had gone on a date with a guy she met online. Concerned, her parents quickly filed a missing person report with the local police. Initially, reports for both Roxane and Nabil were handled separately because no one could confirm who they had gone out with. However, both families later mentioned that the authorities seemed to lack urgency in addressing the cases, even stating that both individuals were adults who had the right to privacy and weren't required to keep their families informed about their whereabouts. Due to the lack of urgency from authorities, both families decided to take matters into their own hands and started organizing searches through social media. Roxane's sister discovered the name of the man Roxane was supposed to meet and found his social media profile. There, she came across a post from his family indicating that he was also missing and had not been heard from since Friday. Simultaneously, Nabil's sister found Roxane's profile and saw pictures of them together. On Sunday, February 20th, the families of Roxane and Nabil finally connected. Initially, there was tension and distrust between them. Roxane's family feared that Nabil might have harmed their daughter, while Nabil's family worried that Roxane might have influenced their shy son negatively. However, they soon recognized that they were facing the same tragic situation and began working together to search. The families worked hard to find anyone who might have information about Roxane and Nabil's location. They created social media groups to share photos of Roxane and Nabil, asking the public for tips that could assist in the investigation. Friends and colleagues of both individuals joined in, printing flyers, distributing them throughout the community. The flyers included important details to identify them. Roxane had several distinctive tattoos, and Nabil had a noticeable birthmark. Additionally, both of their cars were missing. Nabil drove a silver Renault Clio 3, and Roxane recently purchased a blue Peugeot. The families also organized searches for the vehicles on their own, but those efforts did not yield any results. The police launched a full search on Monday morning, more than 48 hours after Roxane and Nabil were last seen. The delay was based on the belief that they might have taken an unplanned weekend trip without telling anyone. However, as time passed and their phones stayed off, it became apparent that something was seriously wrong. Sadly, this meant that crucial time had already been wasted. Investigators confirmed that Roxane and Nabil was last seen together at a fast food restaurant, with several eyewitnesses and surveillance footage confirming their presence. However, their cars were not located in the nearby parking lot. Since that area tends to be very busy on Friday nights, they may have parked farther away due to a lack of available spaces. The theory was quickly backed up by new evidence. Roxane's car was found parked in a small side street nearby, and everything inside seemed untouched. There were no signs of struggle, no stains, and nothing appeared out of order. This led investigators to believe that they may have chosen to continue their night elsewhere and left in Nabil's car. However, their destination remained unclear. 2 days later, Nabil's car was discovered parked near the Biarritz Lighthouse, a popular tourist spot on a cliff. Unfortunately, there were no surveillance cameras in that area, making it impossible to know what time Roxane and Nabil arrived. The only camera located at the lighthouse had stopped working weeks before, leaving no recorded footage. Investigators found several personal items belonging to both Roxane and Nabil inside Nabil's car. Roxane's phone was mounted on the dashboard in GPS mode. Although it was fully charged, it hadn't been used after a certain point, which helped authorities trace the couple's exact movements. In the back seat, there was Nabil's laptop, and on the passenger seat, Roxane's purse with her keys, cash, and bank cards. It seemed as though they had only stepped out for a moment, planning to come back soon. There were no signs of foul play in the car, only their fingerprints were present, and everything appeared undisturbed. Investigators quickly ruled out robbery or any targeted attack. The only item missing was Roxane's camera, which she likely took with her to capture photos that evening. Her phone eventually died, while Nabil's last phone signal was recorded around 6:30 p.m. from a location near the Virgin Rock viewpoint on the way to the lighthouse, which offers stunning views of the Atlantic Ocean. This route features several lookout terraces built into the cliffside. Although the day started off clear, strong winds developed into a severe storm by evening. The rough weather along the coast became particularly dangerous, with violent waves crashing against the cliffs. Peak storm conditions aligned with the last recorded activity from Nabil's phone, indicating Roxane and Nabil was at the lighthouse at that time. Based on the evidence gathered, investigators pieced together the following scenario. After dining at a restaurant, Roxane and Nabil chose to visit a lighthouse to watch the sunset. Roxane, an avid photographer, brought her camera to capture the beautiful scenery. While they were at one of the lookout points, the weather suddenly turned severe. As they attempted to return to their car, they were hit by large waves that lashed against the cliffs, possibly sweeping them away. Most evidence supported this version of events, leading law enforcement to initially determine that there was no foul play involved and consider closing the case. They even suggested a theory that Roxane and Nabil may have chosen to end their lives together, which would allow them to avoid extensive investigations and simply archive the case materials. However, Roxane and Nabil's families strongly rejected this conclusion. They insisted that the investigation remain active, as no bodies had been found. There was still hope that Roxane and Nabil might be alive and in need of assistance. Roxane's sister discovered a notebook in her apartment that had passwords for her social media accounts. After accessing the accounts and looking through her recent messages, nothing concerning or unusual was found. It was clear that Roxane had been primarily communicating with Nabil. Their relationship appeared to be loving and respectful, with both expressing enthusiasm about their time together. They carefully planned their dates and demonstrated real concern for each other. There were no signs that either of them had contemplated ending their lives. Law enforcement stated that all options were still being explored until Nabil and Roxane were located, whether alive or deceased. One theory proposed that Roxane and Nabil may have decided to go into hiding voluntarily, but both families strongly opposed this notion. Since they went missing, neither Nabil nor Roxane has used their bank cards, checked their emails, logged into social media, or turned on any electronic devices. Nabil's family, who lived in an area known for safety issues, feared that Roxane and Nabil might have been abducted. To assist in the search for their son, Nabil's parents decided to hire a private investigator. They feared that someone might be holding Nabil and his friend captive while awaiting ransom demands. Unfortunately, they never received any communication indicating that was the case. Meanwhile, Roxane's family leaned more toward the official theory that Roxane and Nabil had been caught in a tragic accident. There had been previous incidents at the same cliff near the lighthouse where tourists were swept away by rough waves. Still, Roxane's relatives insisted that the couple couldn't be declared deceased until their remains were recovered. Due to the ongoing storm, search efforts at sea were limited to helicopters and drones, as it was too dangerous to send in boats or divers. By the time the weather calmed down, too much time had passed, and no trace of there could be found. Over 3 years have passed since Roxane and Nabil disappeared, and the case is still open. Initially, the search focused on nearby towns, but it has now expanded to include neighboring European countries where remains could potentially be found under certain conditions. While the search began with physical descriptions, both families later provided DNA samples to help identify any unidentified remains that might be discovered. Unfortunately, despite these efforts, no trace of Nabil or Roxane has been found. Both families have often voiced their frustration with what they see as the police's slow response. Right from the beginning, investigators seemed to believe that Roxane and Nabil had drowned and did not explore other possibilities, which led the relatives to take action themselves. Months later, it was found that a small hotel near the lighthouse had a surveillance camera that recorded part of the path to the lookout point. That footage could have revealed whether Nabil and Roxane went that way. Sadly, no one requested the recordings, and they were automatically deleted after 30 days. The most troubling aspect is that, even after all this time, neither Roxane and Nabil's bodies nor their belongings, including Roxane's camera, have been located. For many years, the families have contacted agencies in Spain, the UK, and other countries to ask about any unidentified remains. Nabil's family still holds on to hope that he might be alive but unable to contact anyone because he is being held somewhere. Both families are still pushing for the case to remain open. They are sharing their story through various media outlets, bloggers, and influencers, hoping someone will eventually provide information about what happened to Roxane and Nabil on February 18th, 2022.
Let's look at the events that took place in Kershaw, South Carolina, on December 26, 2011. A 30-year-old woman named Hope Melton called her grandmother to express her fear that someone was following her while she was driving on a rural road. Unfortunately, the call was cut off before Hope could provide more details. To investigate the case, the police reviewed CCTV footage, which helped them identify the suspect. Hope Melton, whose full name was Beverly Hope Roscoe Melton, was born on December 4, 1981, in Charlotte, South Carolina. She was the daughter of William Roger and Elizabeth Ray Hodge Roscoe. Hope graduated with honors from Chesterfield High School in 2000, where she participated in various organizations, including the Beta Club, the Vocational Honor Society, the Health Occupations Class, and the Chorus. At the time of her death, she was managing T&T Country Store in McBee, South Carolina, and actively attended Lancaster Church of God, where she taught children's church. Hope had been happily married to Gary Lee Melton for just over a year, and they were excited about starting a family. Unfortunately, Christmas 2011 was the last holiday they spent together. On December 26, Hope planned to visit her grandmother, who lived about 30 miles away, for lunch. However, during the drive, she called her grandmother in a distressed voice, saying someone was following her and asking for help. The call was suddenly disconnected, leading Hope's mother and grandmother to rush out to search for her. About 5 miles from their location, they noticed Hope's car parked on the side of a rural road, but Hope was missing. Her grandmother immediately called 911. The call was sent to the county sheriff's office, and it was classified as a missing person case. Quick action is crucial in such situations. One of the sheriff's office deputies arrived at the scene and examined Hope's car. It was undamaged and in working order, so an accident was ruled out. A forensic team searched the vehicle but discovered no clues about Hope's location. Volunteers and police began searching the neighborhood for any clues. Gary, Hope's husband, who was visibly upset, arrived at the scene and told the police that Hope intended to stop at a gas station on her way to visit her grandmother. This was the only information the detectives had at that moment. Hope's house was about 30 miles from her grandmother's, and there were 4 gas stations along that route. The detectives decided to check each gas station one by one. At the first gas station, the detective in charge of the case reviewed security camera footage in hopes of spotting Hope. Gary mentioned that she left their home around 11:45 a.m., so the detective requested footage from the hour leading up to her distressed call at 12:19 p.m. Initially, a male customer entered the store, and everything seemed normal. 3 minutes later, a woman appeared on the video. Hope was described as being blonde, approximately 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighing around 140 pounds, and wearing a pink shirt and blue jeans. However, the detective quickly noted that the woman in the footage was taller than Hope, so it wasn't her. The detective continued to review the tape until 12:45 p.m., but there was no sign of Hope, indicating she may have gotten gas at a different station. Meanwhile, Hope's family was grappling with shock and trying to find reasons for her disappearance. They were hopeful that she was safe and would return home soon. The detective investigating Hope's disappearance visited a second gas station located just 10 miles from where her abandoned car was discovered. This station had surveillance cameras that could provide important evidence. Upon arriving, the detective spoke with the manager and explained that they were searching for a missing woman. After describing Hope's appearance and the car she was driving, the manager remembered possibly seeing her around noon. The footage from the outside camera confirmed that Hope had been at this gas station before she vanished. She had filled up her car and seemed untroubled at that time. Another camera recorded a man holding the door open for her as she entered the store. After buying gas, Hope left the store looking cheerful, as if she was eager to spend time with her grandmother. Upon reviewing the video again, the detective became more interested in the man who had opened the door for Hope than in Hope herself. The footage showed a man in a white cap following her inside. He glanced at her while she paid for her gas and exited the store. The detective decided to focus on identifying the man in the cap, but the footage did not reveal any clues about his identity. The detective aimed to identify the car of a man seen in surveillance footage. One of the recordings showed Hope walking towards the store to pay for gas. At that moment, a dark minivan arrived, and a man wearing a white cap got out, but the license plate was not visible. The detective then switched to another camera that captured Hope driving away from the gas station. As she returned to her car, a gray car appeared, and its driver watched her leave. Neither this driver nor the man in the white cap followed Hope out of the gas station. The detective replayed the footage multiple times to catch every detail, convinced there were more clues in the gas station video. He returned to the footage of Hope walking back to her car and noticed another vehicle, a striking red Chevy. This car crossed the parking lot and headed toward the exit, following Hope as she drove away. The detective realized that he had seen this car tailing Hope right before her disappearance. With evidence that she had been followed from the gas station, the police needed to determine what happened next. The search party discovered alarming evidence 6 miles from Hope's abandoned car, a pink bracelet and a blood-stained blanket. Hope's husband identified the bracelet as a Christmas gift he had given her, raising serious concerns about her safety. On her way to her grandmother's house, Hope passed an office building equipped with numerous surveillance cameras. However, the building was closed for Christmas, making it difficult for the detective to find an office manager with access to the CCTV system. Eventually, he located someone who had the keys and could operate the cameras. The surveillance system only recorded when there was movement, so the detective began reviewing footage from just after noon. He saw Hope's car enter the frame at 12:06 p.m., followed 2 seconds later by the red Chevy seen at the gas station, which was trailing just a few yards behind her. Both vehicles were heading north toward the wooded area where Hope's car was discovered. Although the footage did not clearly show license plates, the red Chevy was recognizable, leading the police to issue an all-points bulletin, APB, for it. It took about an hour or two before this red vehicle was stopped by police on a street in Jefferson, South Carolina. The driver was 23-year-old local resident Nicholas Miller. There was no one else in the car besides him, and he was very nervous when the police pulled him over. Perhaps he had something to hide. He was brought to the police station, where a detective questioned him. Miller answered all questions evasively. The detective asked Miller to describe how he had spent the day, what he had been doing, and where he had been. Miller replied that he had spent the morning shopping at a Walmart store 30 minutes away. He then drove back to Jefferson. Police requested a search warrant for Miller's car, and the detective investigating Hope Melton's disappearance went to Walmart, where Miller said he shopped. Police had to check his story. The store had numerous cameras recording everything that happens on the sales floor. He was driving a red Chevy, and at about 10 a.m., his car pulled into the parking lot. When the driver got out, the detective saw that it was indeed Miller. So far, his story was confirmed. He just walked into Walmart like it was a normal day, like hundreds of other shoppers, and nothing out of the ordinary seemed to be going on. It seemed like he was just going about his normal business. He didn't take a shopping cart or shopping basket, but as the tape played, the detective realized that Miller was no ordinary shopper. He seemed to be just hanging around the store, uninterested in the merchandise being sold there. Perhaps he was in the store for an entirely different purpose. At one point, the detective noticed that Miller was following a woman who was not paying attention to him but was minding her own business. Reviewing the footage further, the detective became convinced that his assumption was correct. Wherever the woman went, Miller followed her. However, a few moments later, she reappeared in the footage again, this time with a man. At this point, it would be safe to assume that Miller realized that this was an unrealistic target for him. A few minutes later, the couple left the store. Investigators speculated that the woman may have been lucky to escape. After a few more minutes, cameras captured Miller leaving the store. As he exited Walmart, it appeared that he was frustrated because a potential target had slipped from his grasp. We can only assume at this point that he was heading back to Jefferson, where he would eventually meet Hope at a gas station. Hope's family had hoped for her safe return home, but when the police obtained a search warrant for Miller's car, it became clear that something terrible had happened to Hope. While examining the car, forensic investigators saw blood spatter on the passenger side fender and on the driver's side bumper. They also found Hope's wallet in Miller's car. Now that the authorities had new evidence, the decision was made to question Miller again. It is important to note that the interrogation was conducted by Chesterfield County Sheriff Sam Parker, a person whose name is significant during this case. During the interrogation, Miller began to deny his involvement in Hope Melton's disappearance, but when informed of the evidence found, he finally admitted his guilt and agreed to take the police to Hope's body. Miller led detectives to a remote turkey farm, 14 miles from where Hope's car was found. She was lying on the ground, on her back, face up, with no clothes on, an utterly horrific scene. Miller was unable to give any reasonable explanation for why he had done it. Hope's family was informed of the discovery of her body. What had happened to her had forever changed the lives of those who knew and loved Hope Melton. Now, the police could finally piece together the events that led to Hope's death. Investigators learned that Miller had recently broken up with his girlfriend, which they believed may have triggered his nervous breakdown. At the gas station, Miller saw Hope filling up her car and decided to follow her. Hope had just enjoyed a wonderful Christmas with her family and was looking forward to spending a special day with her grandmother. Unbeknownst to her, someone was tracking her movements. Once they were on a secluded road, Hope realized she was in danger and called her grandmother for help. Miller later confessed that he had forced Hope off the road, dragged her from her car, and shoved her into his vehicle. He then took her into the woods, assaulted her, and committed further atrocities. To conceal his crime, Miller took Hope to a turkey farm, where he abused, then brutally beat her to death with a baseball bat and disposed of her body. What began as a routine gas stop turned into a terrifying encounter with a predator, leading to a tragic outcome for Hope. The details of this crime are unimaginable. Nicholas Miller has been charged with multiple offenses as the trial approaches. Additionally, his ex-girlfriend provided disturbing evidence, including photos showing Miller chasing her in his car just hours before he kidnapped Hope Melton. Now let's focus on Chesterfield County Sheriff Sam Parker. Parker was fired from the police force for several reasons. Officials accuse him of giving preferential treatment to inmates, taking property meant for the sheriff's office for personal use, providing uniforms, badges, and weapons to civilians. He allowed 2 inmates to live and sleep outside the jail in exchange for doing work on his property. While at the Chesterfield County Prison, where the inmates were allowed to sleep, they had access to the internet, phones, and unlimited unsupervised visitors, all with Parker's knowledge. Prosecutors also claimed that Parker gave inmates special privileges, such as alcohol and unsupervised visits with women. The inmates were allowed to go shopping and eat at restaurants in return for allegedly doing work on Parker's house and personal property. Consequently, Parker faced trial. During the trial, a prisoner, who is serving a 15-year sentence for arson, testified against Parker. He stated that while in the Chesterfield County Jail, he was able to furnish his cell with flat-screen TVs, a refrigerator, and a new mattress, purchasing these items with money sent by his family. A prisoner informed jurors that he had lunch with deputies and was allowed to buy and wear regular clothes instead of his jail uniform. He mentioned that he worked at one of the county's impound lots, where he had access to the internet, phones, and a Facebook account. Eventually, he was moved from jail to the sheriff's office, where he engaged in intimate activities with a female visitor, celebrated his birthday with a party that featured filet mignon and alcohol. It's quite unusual for an inmate to host a party at the sheriff's office. He also stated that a deputy drove him and another inmate in a marked sheriff's office car to Florence, South Carolina, for a lunch date with a female friend. He explained how he became close to Parker by working at his home, attending church with him, and giving gifts to Parker's daughter. In 2014, Parker was convicted of 5 counts of misconduct in office, 2 counts of providing contraband to inmates, and 1 count of embezzlement. He received a 2-year prison sentence with the possibility of parole. As the judge prepared to announce the sentence, the former sheriff became emotional, expressing remorse to the residents of Chesterfield County, his family, and friends. After the verdict was delivered, Parker apologized to his family for the shame he caused and to his fellow law enforcement officers. Previously, Sheriff Sam Parker had interrogated Miller, who confessed to the crime and led the police to Hope Melton's body. Initially, Miller was facing the death penalty, but the sheriff's office actions prevented prosecutors from pursuing that option. During the interrogation, the sheriff promised Miller that if he confessed and disclosed what happened to Hope Melton, he would not receive the death penalty. However, the sheriff did not have the authority to make such a promise. Believing the sheriff, Miller confessed to the crime, which ultimately compromised the case. Attorney Dan Johnson issued a statement saying former Chesterfield County Sheriff Sam Parker had seriously damaged the case. Johnson explained that Sheriff Parker secured a confession from Nicholas Miller by making an illegal promise not to pursue the death penalty. Due to Parker's serious misconduct in coercing Miller's confession with this promise, all statements made in relation to it should be excluded from the trial. In March 2015, 26-year-old Nicholas Miller admitted guilt to all charges and received a life sentence without the chance for parole. Hope Melton's family was outraged and frustrated with the former sheriff. Hope's mother, Elizabeth, expressed disappointment, as they had hoped for a death penalty sentence for Miller. The family is still waiting for an apology from Parker while actively seeking justice and working to honor Hope Melton's memory.